This is Hidden Killers with Tony Bruschi. Here now, Tony Bruschi.
There's a reason the Kohberger case keeps pulling us back in, even with the verdict in, even with him sitting behind bars for the rest of his life. Because the closer you look, the more you realize how much we still don't know, and maybe never will. The DNA on the knife sheath is the piece everyone points to, the single clean link the prosecution was prepared to carry into court. But everything else, the missing clothing, the K-bar knife itself, no digital trail connecting him directly to the victims, the kind of things you expect to find in an investigation like this, they're just not there. And that's not an accident. Now, we're heading directly from the Cellebrite examiners, the people who cracked open his devices and sifted through them line by line. What they describe isn't just someone who wiped their phone. It's someone who cleaned as they went, searching something, deleting it again, and really delete it so it can't be brought back. But here's the thing about data. Some of it burrows too deep to be just swept away. Wi-Fi logs, for example, the kind that silently record where your device is connected or even just scanned nearby. And one of those network names, the Mad Greek. If you've been following this case from the beginning, you remember the swirl of rumors around that restaurant. 2 of the victims worked there. A former employee claimed she'd seen Kohberger inside. The owner denied remembering him. It fizzled out as one of those he said, she said threads until now. The Cellebrite data says his phone was in range of that Wi-Fi at least once, maybe more. That doesn't prove he sat down and ate lunch, but it does plant him close enough to shake hands with the router. So now you've got a man who's surgically erasing his digital footprints, leaving behind just enough to hint at where he's been. You got an early eyewitness saying he ordered a vegetarian pizza. You've got an owner pushing back, and you've got a forensic artifact saying, in effect, the phone knew this place. It's a lot of smoke for a fire that supposedly never happened. Jennifer Coffindaffer, retired FBI special agent, joining us to discuss. Jennifer, you've worked cases where tiny details like this, half forgotten by humans but remembered by machines, end up changing the shape of the investigation. Given what we know about his cleanup habits and the Mad Greek connection, makes you wonder, what does that tell us about how he was moving in the weeks before the murders? Let's get into it.
Well, I think then you have to cross-reference who was working there at that time. Was Xana working there? Was Maddie working there? Mm-hmm. And so they have the particular time frame that the Wi-Fi connected. And according to the report I saw, it was multiple times, possibly.
Yeah.
That's what they said. So if that's the case, did they do their due diligence, which I can't imagine they wouldn't, and cross-reference that with when Xana and Maddie were there? Or, was Kaylee there eating? She wrote a beautiful review about the Mad Greek. And so could she have been spotted there? It's clear to me that he was around the Mad Greek, and it's very coincidental, but we haven't seen that report where somebody looks at the dates and where everybody was at that time to give us that piece of the puzzle.
That's a key piece to this, and I'm very curious about it. I'm also curious, I would imagine, credit card receipts, things of that nature. I'm going to guess the Mad Greek, I'm going to guess the investigators would have looked back through that. Would they have not to seen if he had eaten there at some point in time, if it had come up on anything? Otherwise, you would assume he'd have been paying in cash.
Right. And you summed it up well. One of the workers there very early on said, listen, he was there. And then but the ownership was very clear and really dogmatic. I remember this really coming out strong that no, he wasn't there. But I think you could only say that if you had a credit card or a digital trail on a bank card. But if he paid in cash, you wouldn't have that. And we know that he switched from using his credit cards and went to cash. That's already been discussed at different times, I guess, after the crime. But did it before the crime when he was at key locations where he would have been surveilling or looking or gawking, as I said, coveting these girls? And I think for anybody who says there was no trail found back to Maddie or Kaylee, you can say that, but the logic tells us there was. It's just he erased it, and we can't find it. But shoot, this mad Greek, I want to see. Surely they did the proper cross-reference with when they would have been there.
And with surveilling Kohberger as well, Kohberger surveilling them at the homes, as we've learned about that many times now. It wouldn't be, I think, insane to think that maybe he was also surveilling them outside of the restaurant as well, if that's what he really wanted to do. I mean, we're talking, this was a place on Main Street in Moscow, Idaho. There's other places nearby on this downtown. It's literally Main Street where one could somewhat blend in, whether they're just a parked car nearby or sitting on a bench or walking up and down Main Street and gazing in the window as he walks by. I mean, there's a lot of ways that this could have happened, or it was part of the surveil and not necessarily him showing up for lunch. Although we do have that one person who says they served him a veggie pizza or a vegetarian pizza, which is a pretty specific thing to say that you believe somebody ate if you're not sure if they went there or not, to know their actual order.
Yeah, I agree. I always have believed he went there and ate, or went there and saw them. Mm-hmm. And again, that was based in large part on that interview with a former restaurant worker, mm-hmm. and the fact that he was a vegan and they served vegan food, mm-hmm. and the fact that Kaylee had a write-up about going to that restaurant, mm-hmm. And the fact that two of the victims worked there. It made a lot of sense to me that could have been where he came upon them. Mm-hmm. It sounds like we won't know unless they cross-referenced those work shifts and Kaylee, the different times Kaylee was there. Mm-hmm. If they cross-reference that might be something, but they don't seem to be talking about it.
Yeah, I mean, obviously, this all takes resources. This all takes manpower, and the man is behind bars now. So, how many, actual law enforcement resources are actually looking into any of this anymore? I'm going to guess none. So this is all pretty much up to true crimers if they really want to find out the answers. And other than just getting the answers, I don't know that it changes a whole lot. Maybe it helps put some pieces together, for the family of understanding his actions, but does it really matter at this point? I don't know the answer to that, but the curiosity, I'm sure, will always linger. I would assume we figure out the answers to this stuff without having to ever go back and ask Bryan Kohberger, because then that kind of takes his spotlight away a little bit. Like, we figured it out. Sorry, we don't need your feedback. We already figured it out on this end. But there will still certainly be questions there about it. What do you take out of the police scanner listening, where he pulled up the streaming of it the night of the murders itself? This seems a little old school to me, of listening to the police scanner. And what is it exactly going to tell him if he's listening to it before the actual murders, not necessarily after, to see when they arrive and go into the scene?
Well, the reason it's so critical is it's going to tell him where they're at. Sure. Hi, we're responding here, we're responding there, mm-hmm. we're 10-8, we're 10-7, we're, in other words, in service, out of service, mm-hmm. What they're responding to. So I think it's a real critical piece that I would want to know if I was committing a crime. I would be monitoring the scanner. And, the Moscow Police Department, I would believe, do not have encrypted radios. Mm-hmm. So communication by the FBI, our radios are encrypted. You cannot scan them. Mm-hmm. They do not come up on a scanner, and the codes are changed. You have to do these code changes all the time. Mm-hmm. So, they're impenetrable, but no, the Moscow ones aren't impenetrable. And so I would have wanted to know that. Where are the units?
But what is the thought process there? Because by the time he gets there and he commits the crime, Is he? How long do I have to get away? I mean, by that point, the activity will have changed as far as what's going on out there in the ether of Moscow, Idaho, and it's not that big of a town, so it's not like, oh, great, they're on the south side of Chicago. I'm on the north side. It's going to take an hour. It's Moscow. It'll take them 2 minutes to get from one side to the other. Does it? I don't know. It seemed. I mean, what would that have been valuable data for him, or is it just another piece of data for a man whose brain just fed and ran on raw data?
Personally, I think it was brilliant, and I would have wanted to know that. I would have wanted to know, okay, they're at a big fight, and all the units have responded, or this or that. I want to know how many are even on duty at 4 a.m. I mean, honestly, that's the witching hour, right? I mean, you're talking, everybody is done partying. People are not getting up yet and driving yet for their shifts, mostly, 6 a.m. shifts, right? That is between 3 and 5. And he knew that. He knew that's when things should be pretty darn quiet. And so I think he just wanted to know. I bet he knew exactly how many units. As you said, it's a very small department. And now wow, there's only 2 units here at all. Well, and they're having coffee. And they're 10-7.
And add that to the mix of he didn't know what he was walking into. So was the thought process at that moment in time, I'm going to go after one person? And what if somebody else is there in the house and they call 911? Is that what the thought is of if the police do get notified of my presence, here's my window to get out? And then he goes in the place and it discovers, he ends up killing 4 people unexpectedly. That seems to throw a little wrench in the plan of whatever data the police scanner radio would have given you.
Yeah, it's never foolproof, but in any operation, and I'll just call this an operation that he was running there, data, any and all data can be useful. And so you're going to look for it all. Yeah. That's how I see it. You can, the more data, the better. And if you find some unuseful and other useful, that's fine. But at least you have it. And as you said, listen, this was a guy who always wanted to be an officer. I consider that he was running this like a special op. He planned for it. He had every base covered. And this would be one of the bases, in my view, you would want to have covered if you were going to do something like this. And it's outside of the box of what most mass murderers or fledgling serial killers would do. Yeah. Because he had that education. And he had that initiative to want to do that. So it makes a lot of sense to me, although I agree with you. Was it really helpful? Maybe not, but maybe was.
What Jennifer just broke down makes it clear. This isn't just about whether he sat at a table in a restaurant. It's about how he operated, if the Cellebrite logs are right, and if his phone reached out to the Mad Greek's Wi-Fi more than once. That is not random. That's proximity. That's time spent in the physical orbit of 2 of the victims. And when you lay that over his own surveillance of their home, it stops looking like coincidence and it starts looking like a pattern. And what do we know about patterns? If you watch this show or watch true crime, they mean something. But it's also about the way those traces survived. He wasn't deliberate in his digital hygiene, search, delete, purge. Rather, he was deliberate in his digital hygiene of search, delete, purge. Yet some things, no matter how deliberate you are and how good your digital hygiene is, you just can't get out. Some things can't be fully erased without nuking the whole device, Wi-Fi records, system logs, the deep, stubborn roots of a phone's memory. Those are the bits investigators can still dig out years later. And if a casual coffee shop hotspot can survive his cleanup, what else might still be lurking in the shadows of his data? Then there's the human side, the conflicting accounts, a former worker swearing she remembers him right down to the order, and the owner adamant that he was never there. Both could be telling the truth from where they stand. Memory is subjective. Data is not. But even data needs context. Without cross-referencing those logs against work schedules, receipts, and other sightings, we're left with possibilities, not certainties. And as Jennifer pointed out, that kind of cross-checking takes resources. Resources that may not be spent now that the man is already locked up. That's where this case lives on. In a space between what we can prove and what still gnaws at the edges. We may never get the tidy answers, and maybe the families will decide they don't need them. But these fragments, the IDs in a glove, the missing knife, the Wi-Fi log from a little Main Street restaurant are more than trivia. They're pieces of a map he drew in the weeks and months before that night. And that's why we keep coming back to them, because every so often a case like this isn't about the big cinematic evidence. It's about the crumbs he didn't mean to drop, the ones too small to notice at the time, but too stubborn to disappear. Those are the pieces that someday might tell us the rest of the story. Let us know your thoughts in the comments section on YouTube, or press subscribe wherever you're downloading us, or do both. And press subscribe if you're listening to us on the podcast platforms. And do leave your thoughts in the comments section, like I said on YouTube. We do greatly appreciate that. Until next time, my name's Tony Bruschi. We'll talk again real soon.
Want more on this case and others? Then press subscribe now and don't miss a moment of true crime coverage from Tony Bruschi and the Hidden Killers podcast.